All right, friends, today we're going to talk about steel well casings and one of the most common issues I find, and it might surprise you what's going on. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the well casing, talk a little bit about how wells work, what a casing is, get a little bit of background, and then we're going to talk about what's going on here. So let's get to it. What we're looking at here is a well casing. Now, it's basically just going to be a pipe sticking up out of the ground. Typically in our area, we use 6-inch steel casing just like that one. Now, sometimes you'll get 6-inch PVC or 6¼ inch PVC. Most commonly though, steel. When it comes to a well, you want to have it up higher than the ground so that way all the surface water doesn't get into it. The setup for this one's incredibly common. Our state code requires at minimum 8 inches above the surface if you're not in a floodplain. If you are in a floodplain, 24 inches. The reason why is every time it rains, all that water is going to land on the grass. And if you have your well buried, all that's protecting you from that surface water getting in there, bringing bacteria and other impurities, is a little rubber gasket, and typically it doesn't work. So a lot of times if you have your well buried or right flush at the surface, you're going to get bacterial intrusion and all sorts of shenanigans will go on with your well. Most commonly, you're going to have it sitting up like this one. Now, we have a few problems. This well is starting to rot, and the reason it's starting to rot is because of surface water. Now you might be wondering, well, I thought the whole purpose of having the well casing above the surface was to avoid surface water. You're right, that's true. However, if you have water sitting next to metal for long enough, what do you think is going to happen to it? Leave a comment below. When they're drilling a well, basically what they're doing is they're punching a hole through the ground. In our area, we're in what's called the Piedmont range. This is going to be a fancy way of saying we got metamorphic rock, which is a fancy way of saying we have old rock. So in the Piedmont range, how the water kind of works its way through the ground is a bunch of fractures. When you're drilling a well, you're just trying to hit as many of those fractures as you can. Sometimes you get lucky and you hit a really good well where there's plenty of water through those veins and you're good to go. Sometimes you miss, right? And that's why a well yield test is very important when you're drilling, so that you know how much water is this well capable of producing. Now in our state, the well driller is required to do a well yield and a potability test to make sure that everything is safe to drink and you have enough water to support the house. When they're drilling down, not all of that dirt is rock, if that makes sense. You're gonna have some soft dirt before you get to the bedrock. And the problem is, if you drill the hole, the bedrock will stay open, but the soft dirt, not so much. So what'll end up happening is if you don't put something in the ground to hold the hole open, the hole will collapse and you're gonna run into a problem of, guess what? Now you can't get the pump out. How well drillers deal with this problem is they put what's called a well casing in. The well casing is that pipe, that steel pipe that we were looking at. Its only job is to keep the hole from collapsing. Now, what they do to seal that casing against the surface water from getting in is they grout it. So it'll either be bentonite clay or cement that goes in there, plugs it up so that way stuff can't get through and contaminate your water source. Like if a dog goes and takes a leak right on top of the well, you don't want to be drinking that now, do you? One of the things we have to think about though is a steel casing is metal. And you put metal on the outside world like this, it's going to have some problems. It's going to oxidize and it's going to start to rot. PVC, you have less of that issue, but there's other issues such as physical impact. A steel casing, you hit that with a lawnmower, it ain't going anywhere. Your lawnmower is going to get messed up. PVC casing, if you hit it with a lawnmower, you're going to have some issues. The other thing you have to think about is your depth and your heat when it comes to your grouting. So the different material depends on what you're doing. You can't just use all for one. And also steel casing is way more expensive, so if you don't need steel casing, you're gonna go with PVC casing to save that cost. So this brings us to our main issue of today. What's going on? We have ourselves a downspout and a slope in the hill because they installed a pool that's forcing all of the roof water whenever it rains and the surface water whenever it rains to pool right around the well. Let's go take a look, see what's going on. So we have our downspout that terminates right here. We have the water that runs through, and we can see the well is right there. Over here, we have the grade redone because they put a pool on the other side of that fence. So you can see how the hill kind of channels straight towards the well. The problem with this is every time that it rains, all that surface water is going to run right to the well and sit there because it's pretty much flat as soon as it gets to the well. A lot of times, most well drillers will put the well as high up in the property as they can to avoid this situation. But let's look at the actual well and see what's going on. All right, so we look at this well. We have our lid, casing, conduit. This is going to basically be so that way whenever you got to pull the pump, you open up the lid, you can go down to the pitless adapter, pull the pump out, call it a day. Now, it should be attached, it shouldn't just pop right off like that. And if you look inside, you'll see that it's just wires connected together, which supply power to the pump from the house. Now, this is no good, because if we look, you can actually see some of the holes from the side of the casing poking through. The little white pipe is our conduit. This is designed to protect the electrical lines, so that way kids don't just come start grabbing on it, or you hit it with the weed whacker and cause some problems. But the real issue that we're looking at is the rotting of the casing itself. So we can see right here, all this stuff flaking off. Super common. What'll happen is, as the casing rots, it's gonna flake and eventually just peel right off, leaving giant holes like this one. Just about every single time you get a hole in a well casing, it's going to be about 1 inch to 2 inches from the surface. And the reason why is moisture is trapped by grass, mulch. It's going to stay right there. So the moisture is going to cause that seal to rot faster, leading to more holes like this one. So the problem with this is, now you got a gaping hole in the side of your well. Every time you mow the lawn, all that grass trimming is going into your well. When those plants are starting to pollinate, guess what? All that pollen is going into your well. If the hole's large enough, a field mouse might fall into it, and that's kind of gross, isn't it? That's why it's important to make sure you look at your well regularly. I generally recommend every month or two, just walk out here, give it a tug. That lid should be attached. So this well needs a whole refit to make sure everything's good, because you don't want things getting in there. But you should have a nice solid vermin-proof lid. You should have a nice solid conduit, and the casing should be free of any imperfections and dents, cracks, holes, etc. Otherwise, you're going to be drinking stuff that you don't want to be drinking, and that's kind of gross. The EPA recommends to test your water annually, at minimum for bacteria and nitrates. We're near farms. We see all of this open pasture. Nitrates are super common. It can happen, and it can cause some problems with you. Bacteria, though, that's also really gross. You don't want to be drinking bacteria. Typically, whenever you have a hole like this, you're going to see a lot more higher hits of total coliform, and how you fix it is you just put chlorine in the water or an ultraviolet light, and then that should solve our problem. Hopefully, you found this useful, right? Make sure you check your well. Don't put your downspouts directed towards your well. Try to avoid changing the geography or the topography of your land to force the water towards your well, and you hopefully shouldn't have any issues like this. But make sure you check your well regularly. You should look at it all the time to make sure that nothing weird's happening. As usual, though, I have videos posted every day on the World of Well and Septic. Hopefully you found this one interesting. Till next time, guys.